Cassandra Bellamy was a name that echoed across boardrooms and cocktail parties with equal reverence. As the CEO of Bellamy Industries, she epitomized a rare kind of success, one forged in the fire of innovation and steely determination. Under her leadership, the company had not only survived but thrived, breaking into global markets with its groundbreaking technologies. Yet her acclaim wasn't just professional. At home, she seemed to lead an equally enviable life. A stately estate nestled in the Hamptons, an adoring husband named Victor, who was both her confidant and biggest cheerleader, and a close-knit circle of friends who spoke of her with admiration and, often, envy. Her house was more than a home, it was a stage for opulence. From the sprawling gardens that seemed to bloom on command, to the glittering chandelier that greeted visitors in the foyer, it was an embodiment of taste and power. Cassandra's soirees were the stuff of legend, where the most powerful mingled with the most beautiful, and champagne flowed as freely as the ocean breeze outside. It was during one such soiree, a celebration of Bellamy Industries' most successful IPO to date, that the first shadow fell across Cassandra's pristine world. Dressed in a sleek black evening gown that perfectly complemented her commanding presence, Cassandra moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Her laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses, her sharp eyes taking in every detail, every whispered conversation. Yet, even amidst the warmth of congratulations and the haze of expensive perfume, something caught her attention. Victor stood across the room, his tall frame impeccably dressed as always. His easy smile drew people in, a charm Cassandra had admired from the day they met. Yet tonight something was off. Her gaze followed his, landing on Julian, her brother-in-law. It was just a glance, fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it carried a weight Cassandra couldn't explain. The exchange wasn't friendly or brotherly. Instead, it was guarded, as though they shared a secret too dangerous to utter aloud. "Cassandra, darling, a moment." A colleague's voice broke her focus, pulling her back into the flow of the evening. She dismissed the unease, attributing it to exhaustion. But as the evening wore on, her intuition whispered warnings she couldn't quite silence. She noticed the way Victor's laughter faded the moment Julian joined the conversation, how their interaction seemed staged, their moments too calculated. Later that night, in the sanctity of their opulent bedroom, Cassandra finally broached the subject. The moonlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting an ethereal glow on the pristine white linens. Victor lay beside her, scrolling through his phone, his features relaxed, or rather, carefully composed. "Is something on your mind?" Cassandra asked, her voice casual, but her eyes probing. Victor looked up, his expression effortlessly warm. "Just work stress," he replied smoothly. "The new acquisition is keeping me on my toes." He reached out to brush a strand of hair from her face, his touch light. "Nothing I can't handle." His smile was disarming, but Cassandra couldn't shake the feeling that it was a mask. As Victor turned back to his phone, the weight of his words hung in the air. For the first time, the fortress of trust and certainty Cassandra had built around her life felt vulnerable, as though a crack had formed in its foundation. But if there was one thing Cassandra Bellamy knew, it was how to spot a weakness, and how to exploit it when the time came. In the weeks following that fateful evening, Cassandra Bellamy began to notice the threads of her once seamless life unraveling. At first, the signs were subtle. Victor working later than usual, his explanations delivered with practiced ease but lacking depth. Then came the peculiar shifts in Julian's demeanor. Once lively and affable, he now seemed cautious, as if navigating an invisible minefield when Cassandra was near. But Cassandra wasn't just a business titan by chance. Her instincts, honed through years of high-stakes negotiations and relentless boardroom battles, refused to be ignored. What began as a lingering sense of unease quickly transformed into a quiet investigation. The first clue was almost laughable in its simplicity. An expense report from Victor's office showing charges to a boutique law firm. The listing appeared innocuous enough, described as consultations for estate planning, but Cassandra knew their finances intimately. There had been no discussion of trusts or wills recently, and Victor's calendar entries for those dates conveniently listed golf lessons. Cassandra felt her stomach tighten as she connected the dots. Then came the email, marked accidental send. It landed in her inbox late one evening. The sender was her chief financial officer, a man known for his meticulous nature, someone who rarely, if ever, made mistakes. The single line of text, fragmented and uncontextualized, read, "If she finds out, we're all finished." The message ignited a flurry of suspicions. Was Victor siphoning funds? Was Julian involved? She thought of their secretive exchanges at the party, how Julian had always been the most ambitious of the Bellamy clan. What game were they playing? Cassandra forwarded the email to a private account and deleted the original. This wasn't the kind of thing one confronted head-on, not without undeniable proof. Her investigation deepened when she stumbled upon more discrepancies in Bellamy Industries' financial reports. Margins didn't add up and expenses seemed inflated. The discrepancies weren't glaring enough to attract attention from auditors, but were visible to Cassandra's practiced eye. She knew her company inside out. It was her legacy, her life's work, and now it felt as though someone had planted termites in its foundation, gnawing away at its secrets. One evening, she decided to confront Victor in a roundabout way, testing his reaction. Over dinner, she brought up their estate. "We should revisit our financial strategy," she said casually, slicing into her salmon. "With the market fluctuating, it's probably wise to consult our lawyers." Victor barely missed a beat, his response as smooth as ever. "Of course, I've been meaning to schedule something." He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "It's good to stay ahead of things." But Cassandra saw the flicker, the brief hesitation that revealed more than his words ever could. He was hiding something, and the depth of his deception was yet to be uncovered. By the time she found the hidden file on his personal laptop, encrypted and clumsily disguised as a folder of vacation photos, her suspicions had solidified. The folder contained scans of legal documents with Julian's name alongside Victor's, detailing the quiet transfer of assets to shell companies. The dates aligned perfectly with the firm's unexplained financial anomalies. It wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated coup. Cassandra realized that Victor and Julian weren't merely planning to siphon her wealth, they were attempting to strip her of her empire. Still, she held her silence. The Cassandra Bellamy of years ago might have confronted Victor immediately, demanding answers, but the woman who sat in her palatial office now, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, had learned the value of strategy. She was no stranger to adversaries, and she understood that wars weren't won with impulsive strikes. They required patience, precision, and timing. She began copying every shred of evidence, from bank statements to emails, encrypting them in a private vault on a server only she could access. By day, she carried on as the unshakable CEO, hosting meetings and making decisions with her usual authority. By night, she prepared for the reckoning that would inevitably follow. In her world, power was more than influence or wealth. It was the ability to stay 3 moves ahead. And Cassandra Bellamy had no intention of losing. The night of the annual gala was a sparkling affair, the kind of event where Bellamy Industries showcased its strength and Cassandra displayed her unrivaled mastery of perception. Her estate gleamed under a canopy of lights, and guests buzzed with anticipation as servers flitted through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Cassandra moved through the room with her usual poise, her sequined gown reflecting the light like a beacon of authority. But tonight she was different. The warmth in her smiles was calculated, her polite nods a performance. Behind her composed exterior, she was a predator, silently observing her prey. It was during one of the evening's quieter moments, when most of the guests were clustered around the main ballroom, that Cassandra caught the faint hum of voices from the study. She had ventured there under the pretense of retrieving a document, but as she approached, her instincts sharpened. It was Victor and Julian, no mistaking their turns. The door was slightly ajar, and Cassandra stood just outside, hidden by the shadows of the hallway. Victor's voice was low, but the venom in his words was unmistakable. "She thinks she's untouchable," he said. "Her empire is built on perception, not reality. Once the board sees the numbers and votes her out, we're in control. You'll get your share when it's done." Julian chuckled, his tone laced with arrogance. "And the prenup? It's airtight, isn't it?" "Already working on it," Victor replied, his confidence chilling. "By the time she realizes, the assets will be locked up offshore. She'll have no leverage." Cassandra's blood ran cold. The words confirmed her worst fears, and more. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated, systematic dismantling of everything she had built. Julian, the brother-in-law she had trusted, and Victor, the man she had once considered her partner, were plotting her downfall with clinical precision. Her hand gripped the edge of the doorway as their voices continued, discussing details about which board members had been swayed and which financial maneuvers would ensure their coup succeeded. They spoke of her as though she were a chess piece, not a human being. Cassandra stepped back, her heart pounding, but not with despair. Instead, she felt a cold, controlled fury rising within her. She had built Bellamy Industries from the ground up. She had faced impossible odds before and triumphed. This would be no different. Later, as she rejoined the party, her mask of charm and grace firmly in place, she began to strategize. Victor and Julian had played their hand. Now it was her turn. She would take every move they'd made and turn it against them. The gala ended as a success in the eyes of the guests, with Cassandra delivering a heartfelt speech about resilience and innovation. But as the last guest departed and Victor retired for the night, Cassandra sat alone in her office, the betrayal replaying in her mind. What they had underestimated was the very quality that had made Cassandra Bellamy unstoppable, her ability to turn adversity into opportunity. The battle lines were drawn, and Cassandra was ready to fight. This wasn't an ending, it was the beginning of her retaliation. In the days following the gala, Cassandra became a study in composed fury, her every action a deliberate step in her silent war. She didn't confront Victor or Julian, nor did she let her suspicions slip in her demeanor. Instead, she focused on what she did best: strategy. Every betrayal she uncovered became a weapon in her growing arsenal, and she wielded her intellect with the precision of a surgeon. Her first move was hiring a forensic accountant, a woman named Elise Dupont, whose reputation for untangling even the most complex financial webs was unparalleled. Cassandra handed Elise the evidence she had quietly amassed: the irregularities in the financial reports, the shell companies linked to Julian, and Victor's boutique law firm visits. Elise's eyes widened as she reviewed the documents, her admiration for Cassandra's foresight evident. "This isn't just embezzlement," Elise said, her voice tinged with intrigue. "This is a coup." "Can you dismantle it?" Cassandra asked, her tone calm despite the storm brewing inside her. Elise smiled, her confidence as sharp as Cassandra's resolve. "Give me a week, and I'll know where every dollar is gone and how to bring it back." While Elise worked on the financial front, Cassandra focused on the human element. She started observing the board members, noting their allegiances and vulnerabilities. Those who had been swayed by Julian's charm or Victor's promises were subtly approached, her conversations carefully designed to sow doubt about their intentions. She reminded them, without explicitly saying so, who had built the empire they stood to inherit. Parallel to this, Cassandra's lawyer began unraveling Victor's prenup gambit. Through discreet inquiries and airtight confidentiality agreements, they discovered that Victor's legal maneuvering wasn't as flawless as he believed. His attempts to conceal his actions left traces, small but enough for Cassandra's team to exploit. Her most audacious move came when she sold their Hampton estate. Victor had assumed a house like her was static, unchanging, immovable. But Cassandra had quietly transferred ownership into her name alone years ago, ensuring its status as her personal asset. With one swift transaction, she liquidated it and moved the proceeds into an offshore trust. When Victor returned home one evening, the house was already being prepared for its new owners, its grandeur reduced to moving boxes and echoes. "What the hell is going on?" Victor demanded, his voice a mix of confusion and fury. Cassandra barely looked up from her tablet, her expression serene. "I thought we needed a change. The market's ripe for sellers." Victor's jaw tightened, but he didn't press further. Cassandra's calmness unnerved him. In the background, Cassandra's private investigator was piecing together Julian's complicity. Meetings, transactions, and hidden accounts all began to form a damning picture. By the end of the week, Cassandra had a full playbook of their betrayal and the means to dismantle it. She prepared divorce papers with precision, ensuring that Victor's betrayal would leave him not just humiliated but penniless. Each page was a nail in the coffin of their deception. On a cool Monday morning, she left a simple note on Victor's nightstand. "You said I was your last chance to let go. Consider me gone." When Victor and Julian finally realized the extent of her retaliation, they would be left with nothing but the ruins of their schemes. This was Cassandra Bellamy's empire, and no one would take it from her. The unraveling of Victor and Julian's grand scheme was as swift as it was brutal. When Victor returned home to find Cassandra gone and the house emptied, the reality of her actions began to sink in. On the nightstand, alongside the note she left, was a manila envelope containing divorce papers and evidence of his complicity in Julian's plot. But the final insult came in the form of a single motel key, an unspoken declaration that he belonged anywhere but the life Cassandra had built. Victor rushed to Julian's office, the weight of Cassandra's retaliation finally cracking his calm veneer. Julian, however, remained defiant, still clinging to the hope that their plan could recover. "She's bluffing," Julian muttered, pacing the room as Victor threw the papers onto the desk. "She sold the house, Julian," Victor snapped, his voice filled with panic. "The accounts are empty, and the prenup doesn't cover what she's already moved." As they argued, the true extent of Cassandra's strike began to unfold. The CESCS announced an investigation into Julian's financial dealings, including several shell companies linked to embezzlement. Victor's name surfaced in leaked documents, tying him to insider trading and fraudulent activity. News outlets quickly picked up the story, their faces splashed across headlines as symbols of corporate greed. A message lit up Cassandra's phone from her private investigator. Julian's accounts frozen, SEC subpoena issued, Victor spotted at Motel, media tipped. Her response was brief, "Let them squirm." But her revenge didn't stop there. Cassandra had compiled evidence of Julian's dealings with corrupt board members and anonymous leaks sent to their rivals. The company's stock plummeted, and those who had conspired against her scrambled to distance themselves from the wreckage. Julian's charisma, once his greatest asset, became his downfall as every ally turned against him to save their own careers. Victor, meanwhile, faced a different battle. Cassandra had strategically frozen joint accounts, leaving him with only the appearance of wealth. His credit cards were declined, his cars repossessed, and the life of luxury he had taken for granted began to crumble. The final blow came when Cassandra revealed her hand to the board of Bellamy Industries. During an emergency meeting, she presented her findings, proof of Julian's betrayal and Victor's complicity. She offered the board a choice: stand with her to restore the company's reputation, or risk sinking with Julian. It was no choice at all. Julian was ousted, and Victor's name became synonymous with disgrace. Months later, Victor and Julian, once confident in their power, found themselves isolated. Julian faced criminal charges, and Victor, stripped of his reputation and resources, had retreated into obscurity. As Cassandra sipped her wine on her penthouse balcony, the weight of betrayal lingered, but so did the satisfaction of justice. She knew her empire wasn't built on trust. It was built on her unwavering resolve. She turned to her private investigator's latest report. Julian had fled to a remote villa in Greece, and Victor had been seen begging old acquaintances for a loan. Cassandra set the file aside with a faint smile. For now, her work was done.